Okay, today we're going to talk about the elements of art and continue that discussion with value and form. And more specifically, we're going to talk about the gradient tool and how to use that to help us to get smooth gradients like you see on the sphere, the cylinder. And also talk about lighting and shadow, and all in hopes to help us fake, because that's what we're doing. We're really drawing on a 2D surface, but we're faking that 3D-ness of objects. I'm going to go ahead and move to another artboard. And I'm going to draw out some of these gradients so you can see them in a rectangular format. Maybe I'll work down here for today. So I'm going to grab my rectangle tool and I'm just going to draw a rectangle. Now, if you notice, my color and for my fill and my stroke are white and black, so default colors. And again, if I wanted to change that color, I'd have to activate it and then double click on the fill color and then pick a new color with my color picker and hit OK. And that should fill in. If I wanted to recolor my stroke, I could double click my stroke and give that another color. Hit OK. Now that magenta doesn't really show up because it's being hidden by the color indicator of the layer, which is right here in that blue. So I'm going to zoom in and deselect that rectangle so you can see that magenta line. And of course we could increase the weight of that so you can see that a little bit better. Today we're going to give this another kind of fill. We're going to give this a gradient fill instead of a solid color. I'm going to take away and actually go back to default colors. That's this little button right here, default colors, or it's the letter D on your keyboard. I want to go to fill, but this time I want to pick this gradient fill. We have a solid fill, a gradient fill, and then we have a fill of none. So 3 choices. I want to pick this gradient fill, which kind of establishes, okay, this is going to be filled with a gradient and we can move on. So that's how Illustrator sees that. I'm also going to take away or give a fill of none to my stroke, go back to my fill, and I also want to pull up the gradient panel, and I want to pull this out so it's always visible. So I'm going to take my panel and just click and drag out of that, and now this panel always remains out. And the cool thing I can do, much like our tools, is that we can really start customizing our window here. So if we're working a lot with gradients, which is what we're going to be doing today, it's nice to have these out. I want a linear gradient. So that's the first thing I'm going to pick. There's 3 different types. There's linear, there's radial, and there's custom. I want a linear gradient. Notice that immediately changes our gradient here. I'm going to draw another rectangle below this one and just kind of line those up. And I want to change the direction of this gradient. And I'm going to do that with the gradient tool. So I'm going to pick the gradient tool right here. Click on that. And if we see our gradient tool in action here, it's going from left to right or right to left. And we have a white swatch, color swatch selected. We have a black color swatch that is selected as our default kind of colors there for a gradient. Just like the fill color, I can double click on this swatch and change that color, and then click away and that window goes away. I can change this color and then click away, and now I have a gradient that goes from red, orange to yellow. And I also have this median, or this midway point of the gradient. Now I say median because this distance goes from red to, and it starts to change. This midway point is the middle point of yellow and red, orange, or red. And I can slide this, depending on how I want this to look, to wherever I need it to be. So if I want more yellow, I can slide it there. If I want more red, orange, I can slide it there. Okay. What if I wanted to go back? I'm going to click these back and reestablish my black and white. I want to make this gradient go from top to bottom. Right now it's going from side to side. So I'm going to use my gradient tool and click down. And now I go from black to white. I can click up, down to up, and go from black to white. So it's reversed. I can go diagonally if I wanted to, or the other way. I can move this around if I wanted to. Check my median, or my midway point. So the gradient tool allows you to expand and customize that gradient fill anywhere, however you want it. Notice that this angle is also present here in our panel. Let's see what happens when we draw it straight up. 90 degrees, that makes sense. How about straight across? Straight across. There we go, 0 degrees. I was holding shift down. And then 45 degrees, holding shift down. Okay. So that is the linear gradient. I'm going to draw a new rectangle, and this time we're going to fill it with the radial gradient. Radial gradient does not go in a linear fashion from left to right or top to bottom. It goes from the center out, or the outward end, depending on how you look at it. Right now my center is black, and I want it to be white. I think that's more effective today. And so I'm going to move these swatches over and past each other to the opposite sides that they were. And so now I have a white center and a black perimeter. And again, I can change this with my gradient tool. I can expand on it by dragging this kind of diameter out. Notice that it expands that gradient. I can also change colors here if I wanted to. I can also flatten and make that gradient a little bit more elliptical if I wanted to. Okay, so that's a radial gradient. In the next video, we're going to talk about how to apply a radial gradient and other gradients to achieve a 3D form. See you then.